I used to think anonymous tips were cheap movie clichés until I opened that attachment. It showed a transfer of $6,000 leaving our account, recurring monthly for 3 solid years. When I zoomed in on the recipient, the air left my lungs. It was not a stranger. It was the woman I trusted with my life. The sender knew exactly where I would look, guiding me straight into a trap set years ago. My name is Brooke Holloway, and up until 45 minutes ago, I was just a 36-year-old marketing manager worrying about the price of organic eggs. Now, I was standing in the parking lot of a Whole Foods, staring at my phone until the pixels blurred. The subject line was succinct. Check his account. $6,000 a month for 3 years to a woman. I clicked the attachment. It was a bank screenshot, a transfer of $6,000, recurring, for 36 months. The smell of lemon hand sanitizer was still wet on my palms. It suddenly made me want to retch. I felt my heart drop out of my chest and land somewhere near the heels of my loafers. I pinched the screen to zoom in. I expected a stripper. I expected a sugar baby named Destiny or Lexus. I did not expect to see the name Sloan Barrett. My lungs seized. Sloan, my best friend of 12 years, the woman who held my hair back when I had morning sickness, the woman who stood beside me at the altar in a silk chiffon dress I paid for, the godmother to my daughter. No, I whispered, the sound scraping my throat. This has to be a joke, but the numbers were sharp and high definition. $216,000, give or take, siphoned out of a life we were building, directly into the pocket of the person I texted every single day. I did not scream. I did not call Gavin to demand an explanation. I did not call Sloan to ask if she had been hacked. I got into my SUV, locked the doors, and sat in the suffocating silence. I forced myself to breathe in for 4 seconds and out for 4. If I let myself feel this right now, I would shatter, and I could not afford to shatter. I drove home. I walked into the kitchen and started chopping bell peppers for tacos. I asked Piper about her math homework. "Mommy, look," Piper said, holding up a worksheet. "I got a star." "Are you okay?" "You're squeezing the pepper really hard." I looked down. My knuckles were white. I forced a smile that felt like it was made of cracking plaster. "I'm fine, honey. Just thinking about work. Where did the money come from?" That was the only sentence playing on a loop in my brain. Where the hell did he get $6,000 a month without me noticing? Gavin came home at 6:30. He was 38, handsome in that groomed sales guy way, wearing the suit he used to charm hospital administrators into buying cardiac monitors. He kissed my cheek. He smelled like expensive cologne in the airport lounge. "Hey, babe," he said, loosening his tie. Traffic was a nightmare on the I-95. "Is that tacos?" He looked so normal, so unbothered. He walked around our kitchen, opened a beer, and laughed at something Piper said, all while hiding a $250,000 secret. The audacity was almost impressive. I played the part of the tired wife. We watched a show. I went to bed early, complaining of a migraine. I lay in the dark, listening to his breathing, waiting. Finally, he got up and went to the bathroom. The shower turned on. I moved. I did not go for his phone. Amateurs go for the phone. I went for the laptop in his bag. I sat on the edge of the bed, the screen's blue light illuminating my shaking hands. I was not looking for texts. I was not looking for nudes. I was looking for the math. I logged into our main bank account. For the first time in years, I clicked on the tab labeled Transfers and Autopay. My eyes went cold. There it was. If I confronted him now, he would lie. He would gaslight me. He would tell me I was crazy. I closed the laptop. I was not going to give Gavin Holloway a fight. A fight implies there are 2 sides. I was going to give him a verdict. I found the vein, and once I cut into it, the bleeding did not stop. It was buried deep in the transaction history of our primary joint checking account. Every single month on the 3rd, a transfer of $6,000 went out. The label was innocuous, boring even. It read, Consulting SB LLC. I stared at the screen, my eyes burning. The audacity was breathtaking. He was not siphoning this from a secret slush fund. He was taking it from the money we used to pay for Piper's dance lessons and our retirement contributions. He had disguised it by moving smaller increments of cash, $800 here, $1,200 there from our savings into checking throughout the week, burying them under legitimate expenses like the mortgage or car payments. Then, on the 3rd, he would bundle it all and push it out as one lump sum. To the casual observer, it looked like a bill. To me, now that I was looking, it looked like theft. But the rabbit hole went deeper. I ran a quick credit check on myself through the banking portal. My score had dipped 14 points. There was a credit card active in my name that I had never held in my hand. A platinum Visa. I clicked on the statement history. Medical conference registration. Las Vegas. $400. The Capitol Grill. Washington, D.C. $350. Hotel deposit. Marriott Marquise. $500. My hands were shaking, but my brain had clicked into a strange, cold overdrive. It was the same mode I entered when I had to audit a failing marketing campaign at work. I opened a new spreadsheet. I did not cry. I typed column A date, column B location, column C amount, column D the lie. I created a specific tab for invoice payments. There were dozens of digital invoices paid to a vendor listed as Barrett Solutions Group. I opened a new browser tab and searched the business registry. The registered agent was Sloan Barrett. Barrett Solutions. I muttered to the empty room. What exactly are you solving? Sloan. I pulled up Gavin's work calendar, which was synced to our family cloud. Then I opened Instagram on my phone and went to Sloan's profile, June 12th through June 15th. Gavin's calendar said Midwest Sales Summit, Chicago. I scrolled down on Sloan's feed, a photo of a deep dish pizza and a view of the Chicago River. Caption Windy City work trip. September 4th. Gavin's calendar client dinner. Boston. Sloan's feed, a picture of a lobster roll at Quincy Market. It matched, every single time. But as I stared at the data, something felt wrong. If this was just an affair, why the paper trail? Why the invoices? Why the LLC people who are cheating usually try to hide the money, not document it as a tax-deductible business expense? This was too systematic. It felt cold. It felt contractual. I needed physical proof. I walked downstairs to the home office, stepping softly on the hardwood so I would not wake him. I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, where we kept the tax documents. I flipped past the birth certificates and the car titles until I hit a folder labeled Loan Agreements. I pulled out a document I did not recognize. It was a notarized promissory note for a business loan, secured against our assets. At the bottom were 2 signatures. One was Gavin's, the other was mine. I brought the paper up to my face. The signature read, Brooke Holloway. It looked like my handwriting. It had the same slant, but the capital B was wrong. I write my B with a sharp, vertical backbone. This B had a lazy, rounded loop. You didn't just cheat on me, I whispered, my voice trembling with a rage so pure it felt like ice water in my veins. You stole my name. I sat there in the dark, listening to the rhythmic swishing of the dishwasher running in the kitchen. The house felt different now. It was no longer a home. It was a crime scene. And I realized then that I was not looking at a crime of passion. Passion is messy. This was a plan. The next morning, I made a phone call from inside my car, parked 3 streets away from our house. I called my cousin Miles, a paralegal who had spent 10 years dealing with corporate litigation. I did not cry. I did not waste time with pleasantries. Miles, listen to me, I said, gripping the steering wheel. Hypothetically, if someone used my identity to open credit lines and funnel money out of joint accounts, What is the very first thing I do? There was a silence on the other end. Then Miles's voice came through, low and urgent. Brooke, tell me you are safe. I'm safe. Just answer the question. Don't touch his phone, Miles said, his tone shifting into professional gear. Do not confront him. If you confront him now, he hides the money. He deletes the emails. You need to be a ghost. Record everything. Back it up. And get a lawyer before he wipes the servers. I hung up and went to work. Not to my office, but to a bank branch across town, a different bank than the one Gavin and I used. I opened a checking account in my name only. I changed every password I possessed, from my email to my airline miles, and enabled two-factor authentication. I transferred $3,000, just enough to survive on if things went south, but small enough that he might not notice the dip in our savings immediately. On my way home, I bought a 64-gigabyte USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop and created a folder named Piper School Forms. Inside that innocent folder, I dumped the screenshots of the transfers, the credit card statements, the loan document with the forged signature, and the business registry search for Barrett Solutions. I went home and played the role of my life. When Gavin walked in that evening, I was plating roast chicken. I kissed him. I asked him how his day was. I even brought up our summer vacation. Babe, we need to book the rental in the Outer Banks for July soon, I said, pouring him a glass of wine. Prices are going up. He took the wine, looking relaxed. Yeah, you're right. I'll look at it this weekend. Actually, things are looking really good for the regional director spot. I might have a bonus coming, I smiled. That is amazing. Honey, you deserve it. Inside, my mind was a calculator. Regional director means a higher salary. A higher salary means higher alimony and more assets for the court to freeze. 2 days later, on a Saturday morning, Gavin went for his usual 10-mile run. He left his personal MacBook Air on the kitchen island. I waited until the front door clicked shut. Then I opened the laptop. The password screen stared back at me. I typed in October 2015. Our wedding date. The screen unlocked. I felt a surge of contempt. It was the arrogance of a man who believed he was smarter than everyone in the room. He thought I was too trusting, too stupid to ever check. I went straight to his email. I did not search for love or baby. I searched for invoice. A chain of emails with Sloan popped up. I clicked the most recent one. It was terrifyingly sterile. There was no flirting, no emojis. It read like a contract negotiation. Attached is invoice 402 for May services. Please process payment by Friday to avoid late fees. I scrolled back, reading months of correspondence. It was a business arrangement. Sloan was billing him, and he was paying. But then I found an email from 3 months ago that made the hair on my arms stand up. Gavin had expressed concern about the paper trail. Sloan's reply was short. Stop worrying. If Brooke asks, just tell her it is a marketing project consult. She works in the industry. It will make sense to her. She won't dig deeper. I sat back, staring at the screen. Sloan thought she knew me. She thought I was just the nice marketing friend who planned birthday parties and organized playdates. She had no idea that she had just handed me the weapon I would use to destroy them both. I did not go to a divorce attorney. Not yet. I went to a man named Darren Klein. He was not the type of private investigator who sat in bushes taking telephoto pictures of cheating husbands at Motel 6. Darren was a former fraud investigator for the IRS. He cost $300 an hour, and I paid him in cash I had withdrawn from 3 different ATMs. I sat in his office, which smelled like stale coffee and toner, and pushed the USB drive across his metal desk. I do not need you to find out who he is sleeping with. I told him, my voice flat. I need you to follow the money. I need to know exactly what Sloan Barrett does for a living and why my husband is paying her $6,000 a month. 3 days later, Darren called me. We need to meet. Now. He did not hand me a folder of grainy photos when I arrived. He handed me a corporate flowchart. Mrs. Holloway. Your friend Sloan isn't just a pretty face, Darren said, tapping a pen against a printed LinkedIn profile. She is the senior procurement manager for the Tri-State Health Network. Does that name ring a bell? It did. It rang a loud, violent bell. That is Gavin's biggest client. I said. He just closed a $2 million contract with them last quarter. Darren nodded grimly. Exactly. Your husband sells medical devices. Sloan approves the purchase orders for those devices. And Barrett Solutions Group. It is a shell, no employees, no office, just a P.O. box in Delaware. The invoices are vague for a reason. I felt the blood drain from my face. It's a kickback, I whispered. He is paying her a bribe to approve his contracts. And he is using marital funds to do it, Darren added. He is washing the bribe through your joint account, disguising it as consulting fees. I sat back in the chair, feeling physically ill. I remembered a dinner party 2 months ago. Sloan had sat at my table, eating my lasagna, drinking my wine, and lecturing us about corporate ethics. She had looked me in the eye and said she fired a vendor for trying to gift her tickets to a Knicks game because it was unethical, all while she was pocketing $6,000 of my family's money every 30 days. But Darren was not finished. He pulled up a printed email on his screen. He had managed to scrape some metadata from the initial trail I found. This is the part you need to see, Darren said, his voice dropping an octave. This was sent from Sloan to Gavin 6 months ago, right before an audit at her company. I read the text highlighted in yellow. If compliance starts asking questions about the LLC payments, we push it to Brooke. She is in marketing. She handles freelance invoices all the time. We can say she set up the structure for tax reasons, and we just signed where she told us to. People will believe she faked the records to skim money. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling off the chair. They aren't just stealing from me, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. They are setting me up. You are the patsy, Darren said bluntly. If this blows up, you go to jail for fraud, and they walk away playing the victims of a manipulative wife. I stared at the paper. They were going to destroy my life. They were going to take my reputation, my career, and potentially my freedom, just to cover their greed. What do? I asked. Do I go to the police? Not yet, Darren warned. If you go now, they have time to destroy evidence and coordinate their lies. They will say you are a jealous wife fabricating evidence. You need to control the timeline. You need to catch them when they are separated, comfortable, and completely unprepared. I stood up. The fear was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They want a scapegoat, I said, picking up the folder. Fine. I will be the one who leads the slaughter. I walked into the office of Evelyn Red with a 3-ring binder tucked under my arm. Evelyn was not the kind of lawyer who advertised on billboards or promised to fight for your feelings. She was a forensic asset litigator who cost $600 an hour, and her conference table was made of glass thick enough to stop a bullet. I did not sit down to cry about my broken heart. I sat down to present a case. Evelyn opened the binder. She spent 10 minutes flipping through the spreadsheet, the bank screenshots, and the corporate registry search for Barrett Solutions. When she finally looked up, her expression was not sympathetic. It was clinically impressed. This is not just adultery. Mrs. Holloway, Evelyn said, tapping a red fingernail on the printout of the transfer. This is dissipation of marital assets on a massive scale. We have identity fraud regarding the credit cards, and based on the recipient's position at your husband's biggest client, we are looking at potential commercial bribery and racketeering. I clasped my hands on the cold table. I am not asking if I can win a divorce settlement. I need to know something else. I leaned forward. I found an email where they discussed pinning this on me. They want to say I created the fake invoices because of my background in marketing. So, my question is, how do I make sure they don't turn me into the defendant? Evelyn stopped tapping. She closed the binder. We need a two-front war, she said sharply. First, we file for divorce and an immediate emergency freeze on all assets to prevent him from moving cash offshore. Second, we must notify the compliance department of his company and hers, but we have to do it through a third-party audit. So it looks like a discovery, not a vindictive tip. If I report him, I blow up our finances, I said. He loses his job. I lose the alimony source. He is already destroying your finances, Evelyn countered. If he gets caught by the feds before you report it, and your name is on those tax returns, you are an accomplice. You are not fighting for money anymore. Brooke, you are fighting for your freedom. That night, I executed the first phase of the strategy. I scanned every document into an encrypted cloud server and sent physical copies via courier to a forensic accountant Evelyn recommended. I spent 4 hours constructing a master timeline. I cross-referenced the dates the money left our account with the dates Gavin claimed to be traveling. I matched those dates to the days Sloan signed off on major purchase orders for the hospital network. It was a perfect circle of corruption. Money went out, contracts came in, and they kept the difference. Then, I found the detail that made my stomach turn. I was reviewing our tax returns from last year, specifically the Schedule C for Gavin's independent consulting side business. He had listed the payments to Barrett Solutions Group under professional services. He had not just stolen the money, he had tried to deduct the bribes as a business expense on a joint tax return that I signed. You arrogant son of a bitch, I whispered to the empty room. I called Evelyn immediately, even though it was 9 o'clock at night. He put it on the taxes. I said, he made me sign a return that legitimized the kickbacks. Do not panic, Evelyn said, her voice calm and terrifying. This is actually good. It proves he deceived you about the nature of the expense. But listen to me closely. Do not confront him yet. Do not scream. Do not throw a vase. If you tip your hand before we get the asset freeze signed by a judge, he will liquidate everything. We need a moment where he cannot breathe. I can wait. I said, I can be quiet. Good. Let him feel safe. Let him think he got away with it. The next morning, I walked into my own office building. I stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the sign, Lark and Linden Strategies. I had spent 10 years building a reputation here. I built brands. I managed crises for other people. I knew how to spin a narrative, how to clean up a mess, and how to make the ugly look palatable. Gavin and Sloan thought they could use my skills against me. They thought they could cast me as the brilliant mastermind behind their cheap fraud scheme because it fit the profile. I adjusted my purse on my shoulder and walked through the revolving doors. They want me to be the scapegoat, I thought, pressing the elevator button. No, I am not going to be the pawn. I am going to be the one who flips the table. Let's go to Chicago, I said to Gavin over Tuesday night pasta. Just for the weekend, we can get a table at Gibson's. I feel like we need a reset. He did not hesitate. Babe, that is a fantastic idea. I have been working too hard. You deserve a break. I will book the suite. He agreed so quickly it was almost insulting. He needed this trip just as much as I did, but for different reasons. To him, a romantic weekend was just another layer of insulation, more mortar to patch the cracks in his double life. To me, it was the stage, and I needed to make sure the other lead actor showed up. On Wednesday, I sat in a Starbucks 3 towns over, wearing sunglasses, and created a fresh email account on a burner phone. I typed a message to Sloan. I did not threaten her. I did not reveal who I was. I simply fed the beast exactly what it liked to eat: paranoia. Subject: he is diverting your cut. Body: Gavin is moving the consulting fee to a new account starting next month. A woman named Jessica in Schaumburg. He plans to terminate the Barrett contract on Monday. Check the logs. It was a lie. Of course. There was no Jessica. But I knew Sloan. She was not loyal. She was transactional. If she thought her cash cow was being milked by someone else, she would not send a text. She would not wait for a polite explanation. She would come to reclaim what she thought was hers, to ensure she knew where to find us. I made a public post on my social media tagging the restaurant and the time Saturday night dinner date at 8. I called Darren next. I need a process server. I said, Chicago. Saturday night? 8 o'clock. He needs to be wearing a suit so he blends in until the last second. Consider it done, Darren said. I have a guy in the city who is very discreet. And the legal filing, Evelyn, is ready. I replied. She has the temporary restraining order and the asset freeze drafted. She is just waiting for my signal to file it electronically. We want the freeze to hit the banks on Monday morning, right when the courts open, so he cannot move a dime. The hardest part was Friday afternoon. I packed a bag for Piper and drove her to my mother's house. I hugged her tighter than usual, smelling the strawberry shampoo in her hair. I refused to let her see even a crack in my armor. Mommy has some boring grown-up work to do this weekend, I told her, smoothing her bangs. But I will be back on Sunday to pick you up for pizza. Okay, Mom, she said, already distracted by her grandmother's iPad. I walked back to the car, feeling a heavy stone in my chest. This was the line. Piper stayed on the safe side of the line. Everything that was about to happen, the shouting, the lawyers, the ruin belonged on my side. That night, the house was silent. Gavin was upstairs, sound asleep, probably dreaming of his next bonus check or his next lie. I sat at the kitchen island with a glass of water. I lined them up in front of me, the USB drive, the printed binder of bank statements, and the laptop with the cloud backup open. 3 locations, 3 keys. If he destroyed one, I had 2 others. If he burned the house down, the cloud remained. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window. My face looked pale, but my eyes were dry. I made a promise to myself right then. I would not cry in that restaurant. I would not cry when I saw Sloane. Tears are what liars use to call you emotional. Tears are what men like Gavin use to dismiss you as hysterical. You want a show, I whispered to the glass. I will give you a show. I closed the laptop. The trap was set. All that was left to do was walk into it. The waiter had just poured a second glass of Pinot Noir when Gavin reached across the white tablecloth and squeezed my hand. The restaurant was loud, filled with the clinking of expensive silverware and the hum of Chicago's elite. But Gavin leaned in, his face soft with a performance of marital bliss. I was looking at listings in Lake Geneva, he said, his thumb stroking my knuckles. I think we can finally afford that summer place next year. You deserve it. Brooke, you have been working so hard. I looked at him. He really believed it. He believed that if he bought me enough things with the money he had not yet stolen, I would stay blind forever. That sounds nice, I said, keeping my voice even. 20 minutes later, the air shifted. I saw her before he did. Sloane walked through the mahogany doors. She was not wearing her usual, meticulously tailored cocktail dress. She was wearing a trench coat over jeans, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, and she was scanning the room with the desperate, frantic eyes of an animal that senses a trap. She was not here for a party. She was here to claim her territory. When her eyes landed on us, she froze. Then, she pasted on a smile that was so brittle it looked like it might snap her face in two. She walked over, her heels clicking aggressively against the floor. Surprised, she said, though her voice wavered. I happened to be in the city and saw your post. I couldn't resist saying hello. Gavin dropped my hand like it was burning. Sloane, what are you doing here? She did not answer him. She looked at me, her eyes darting around, looking for the phantom Jessica I had invented in the email. Brooke, you look great. So do you, I said, taking a calm sip of water. Sloane grabbed Gavin's arm, her grip tight enough to wrinkle his suit jacket. Gavin, can I borrow you for a second? Just a quick work thing. She pulled him toward the bar area. Not far enough to be private, but far enough to look suspicious. I did not turn around. I did not panic. I watched them in the reflection of the mirror on the wall. I saw Sloane whispering furiously, her hands gesturing wildly. I saw Gavin shaking his head, his face draining of color. People at the next table stopped eating to watch. I waited exactly 60 seconds. Then I turned in my chair. Sloane, I called out, my voice projecting just enough to cut through the noise. Stop whispering. Pull up a chair. Gavin looked at me with pure terror. Sloane looked defiant. We're just discussing business. Brooke, Sloane snapped. I know. I said, sit down. Let's have a clean conversation between the three of us. They walked back to the table. Gavin looked like a man walking to the gallows. Sloane sat down on the edge of the chair, ready to bolt. What is this? Gavin asked, his voice cracking. I did not scream. I picked up my phone and unlocked it. I did not open the photo album of our daughter. I opened the spreadsheet. I placed the phone in the center of the table. The screen brightness turned up to the maximum. 36 payments, I said, reading the data like I was reading a grocery list. $6,000 a month, recurring on the third, totaling over $200,000 of marital assets transferred to Barrett Solutions Group. Sloane let out a breathless laugh, but her hands were trembling. Brooke, you don't understand corporate structures. That is valid consulting work. He hired me to advise on consulting. I interrupted, looking her dead in the eye. Is that what we are calling it? Consulting? With an email instruction to blame me if compliance checks the logs. I never said that. Sloane hissed. You are crazy. I tapped the screen again. I opened the audio file. Darren had forwarded me a voicemail Gavin had left for Sloane 3 days ago, which Darren had legally obtained through the cloud backup on the iPad Gavin left at home. I pressed play. Gavin's voice, tinny but unmistakable, floated over the table. Don't worry about the audit. If they push. We say Brooke set up the invoices. She is in marketing. She knows how to bill. We say she did it to hide income. Just stick to the script. Silence slammed into the table. The couple next to us had stopped chewing. Gavin closed his eyes. Sloane looked at the phone as if it were a bomb. That's out of context, she stammered, her face pale. That's not what it means. I reached into my purse. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. It was heavy. Inside was the petition for divorce, the motion for an emergency asset freeze, and the copy of the fraud report prepared for the hospital board. I placed it gently on the table, right next to the wine glass Gavin had been toasting with minutes ago. Gavin, stop talking. Sloane, stop lying, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was colder than the Chicago wind outside. It is not me asking anymore. Now it is the court asking. Gavin followed me out onto Rush Street, his face a mask of sweating panic under the streetlights. He tried to grab my elbow, his grip desperate, but I sidestepped him like he was a stranger on the subway. Brooke, please. You have to listen to me, he begged, his voice cracking. We can fix this. Just come back to the hotel. Don't do this in public. I stopped and turned, but I kept 3 feet of concrete between us. There is no us to fix. Gavin, from this moment on, you do not speak to me. You speak to Evelyn Red. And if you want to see Piper, you request it through the co-parenting app. If you text me, I will add it to the harassment file. Brooke, stop. You're being... He never finished the sentence. A man in a nondescript gray windbreaker stepped out from the shadows of the valet stand. He looked bored, efficient, and entirely unbothered by the tension. Gavin Holloway, the man asked. Gavin blinked, disoriented. Yes, you have been served. The man thrust a thick stack of documents against Gavin's chest. Gavin instinctively grabbed them, and just like that, the legal clock started ticking. It was perfectly legal, perfectly timed, and perfectly humiliating. My phone buzzed in the Uber 5 minutes later. It was Sloane. I answered, putting it on speaker so I could record the call on my backup device. Brooke, are you insane? Sloane's voice was high and shrill, stripping away all her corporate polish. You are going to ruin everything if I go down. I swear to God, Brooke. I will say you were in on it. I will say you designed the invoices you can try, I said, my voice steady against the hum of the tires on the asphalt. But I have the audio of Gavin telling you to frame me, and I have forensic proof that I hired an investigator the day I found out. So go ahead, Sloane. Perjure yourself. See how much time that adds to your sentence. I hung up and blocked her number. By midnight, the dominoes were falling exactly as Evelyn had predicted. I received a text from her order granted. Temporary restraining order on finances is active. Gavin would not know it until he tried to move money. I imagined him back at our house. He had driven back in a frenzy, leaving the Chicago trip behind, trying to salvage what he could. I knew his routine. He would go straight to the wall safe in the master closet, where he kept emergency cash and our passports. He would punch in his birthday. It would beep red. He would try our anniversary. Red again. I had changed the code 4 hours ago to the date I received the first anonymous email. For the first time in our marriage, he was not the one holding the keys. He was locked out of his own life. At 1 a.m, sitting in the guest room of my sister's house, I opened my laptop. It was time for the final blow. I drafted 2 emails. One was addressed to the chief compliance officer at Gavin's medical technology firm. The other was to the ethics board of the Tri-State Health Network. I attached the timeline. I attached the forged loan documents. I attached the audio file. I did not write an emotional rant. I wrote, "Please find attached evidence of commercial bribery and conflict of interest involving your employee." I hit send. By Monday morning, the fallout was swift and violent. Darren called me with an update. Sloane had been suspended pending an internal investigation. The moment HR walked her out of the building, she cracked. She told them Gavin had coerced her, that he had leveraged their friendship to force her to approve the contracts. She was eating him alive to save herself. Gavin came to my sister's house at noon. He banged on the door, shouting my name. I did not open it. I watched him from the upstairs window, looking disheveled and small. My sister stood on the porch and told him that if he did not leave in 3 minutes, she would call the police for violating the restraining order. He left. I sat on the bed, feeling a strange, hollow exhaustion. I picked up my phone to check my email, expecting a message from my lawyer. Instead, there was another email from the anonymous sender. I opened it. The subject line was blank. The body text was just one sentence. "You are not the first person he planned to frame." Attached was a PDF of a court docket from 5 years ago. It was a fraud case in Ohio. The defendant was a woman named Audrey Chin. I stared at the name. My blood ran cold. This was not just a crime of opportunity. This was a pattern. Gavin and Sloane were not just thieves. They were predators who had done this before. And I was the only one who had survived. The discovery phase of a lawsuit is where the skeletons do not just come out of the closet. They are laid out on a table and numbered for the record. 2 weeks into the process, Evelyn called me into her office. She did not offer me coffee. She slid a document across the glass table. It was a home equity line of credit application from 2 years ago. "Look at the signature line," Evelyn said. I looked. There was my name, Brooke Holloway, written in blue ink, but the slant was wrong. The pressure points were wrong. It was the same lazy loop on the B that I had found in the filing cabinet. "I didn't sign this," I said, my voice cold. "He took out a loan against our house to fund the bribes he did," Evelyn confirmed, "and because he signed your name without power of attorney. This is no longer just a divorce dispute about who gets the china. This is forgery. This is identity theft. We filed a separate civil complaint regarding the unauthorized use of my identity. It was a strategic nuke. It took the narrative from sad marital breakdown and turned it into criminal enterprise. Gavin was no longer just a cheating husband. He was a liability. Then came the betrayal I did not see coming. My mother-in-law, Linda, asked to meet me for coffee. I expected her to beg me to take him back, to talk about the sanctity of marriage. Instead, she sat down, her hands shaking around a ceramic mug, and placed her phone on the table. "He is my son," Linda said, her voice trembling. "I love him, but I cannot watch him destroy you and Piper to save his own skin. She opened a text thread from 3 years ago, right when the payments to Sloan started. Gavin had texted his mother, "Don't worry about the risk. I have a safety net. If it cracks, I have someone to take the fall." I stared at the screen. He had not just panicked and tried to frame me recently. He had planned me as his escape hatch from day one. He planned it. I whispered. He married me. He built a life with me, and the whole time I was just insurance. "I am so sorry, Brooke," Linda said, wiping a tear. "Use it." With Linda's evidence in the forgery, the other domino fell. Sloan Barrett realized she was tied to a sinking ship, and she decided to swim. Her lawyer contacted Evelyn with an offer full cooperation in exchange for a statement that might mitigate her own professional disciplinary hearing. In her deposition, Sloan didn't just sing, she composed a symphony of blame. She handed over every email, every calendar invite. She admitted on the record that the $6,000 a month was not for consulting. She called it a retainer for procurement priority. She admitted that Gavin had drafted the invoices himself. She effectively signed Gavin's death warrant to save her own career. Gavin tried to fight back. His defense strategy was desperate. He claimed I was the mastermind, using my marketing background to construct the scheme. She knew everything, Gavin shouted during a deposition, his face red. She designed the logos for the fake invoices she is in marketing. Evelyn calmly submitted Exhibit D, the time-stamped report from the private investigator and the initial anonymous email. "If my client orchestrated the fraud," Evelyn asked, looking over her glasses, "why would she hire a forensic accountant to investigate herself 3 days after receiving an anonymous tip?" Gavin had no answer. Desperate. His lawyer tried to drag Piper into it. He argued that the stress of the divorce was affecting my ability to parent, citing tension in the household. I slammed my hand on the table. It was the only time I lost my cool. "You keep my daughter's name out of your mouth," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "This is about his theft. If you try to use my child as a shield for his crimes, I will make sure the court knows exactly what kind of father steals from his daughter's college fund to pay off a mistress." The financial expert's final report came in a week later. The damage was not just $200,000, with interest, penalties on the fraudulent tax returns, and the unauthorized loans. The total loss was nearly $400,000. We met for a final mediation attempt. Gavin looked terrible. He had lost weight, and his suit hung loosely on his frame. "Brooke, please," he said, trying to summon the charm that used to work. "If we go to trial, it becomes public record. My reputation. I won't be able to work. How will I pay child support if I can't work? We need to protect the family image." I looked at him, and I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just the indifference you feel for a stranger. "Image," I asked. "Image is what you bought with my money for 3 years. You spent $400,000 renting an image of success. Now you pay the bill with the truth." Mediation failed. The judge set a trial date. As I walked out of the courthouse, clutching the file that contained the evidence of my husband's destruction, I looked at the gray sky. I had the forgery. I had the mother's text. I had the mistress's confession. I was going to win. But one question still gnawed at the back of my mind, sharp and persistent. Who sent the email? And why did they wait exactly 3 years to pull the trigger? Gavin walked into the courtroom wearing his best Navy suit, the one he usually reserved for closing million-dollar hospital contracts. He adjusted his cufflinks, flashing a tight, confident smile at his lawyer. He still thought this was a negotiation. He still thought he could charm his way out of a crime. But the moment Evelyn stood up and projected the timeline onto the screen, I watched that confidence evaporate like mist. It was brutal in its simplicity. On the left were the dates of the transfers. On the right were the dates of the forged documents. And right in the middle, glowing in high definition, was the email chain where he explicitly instructed Sloan to frame me. Sloan took the stand first. She tried to cry. She tried to paint herself as a victim of Gavin's manipulation, speaking in a soft, trembling voice. But Evelyn was not interested in her tears. "Ms. Barrett," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the room. "Did you or did you not agree to a plan to designate Mrs. Holloway as the fall guy for these fraudulent invoices?" Sloane looked at Gavin, then at the judge. She realized there was no life raft coming. I did," Sloane whispered, clutching the microphone. Gavin said, "He said Brooke worked in marketing, so it would be believable." He said, "Make sure the paper trail leads to her if we get caught." A ripple of murmurs went through the courtroom. Gavin closed his eyes. When it was his turn, Gavin tried the only card he had left at the apologetic husband. He looked at the judge with wet eyes. "Your Honor, I got lost," Gavin stammered. "I love my family. I made financial mistakes, but I never meant to hurt Brooke. I was just trying to keep everything afloat." I did not roll my eyes. I simply handed Evelyn the final piece of evidence. She walked it up to the bench. It was the home equity line of credit application with my forged signature. "You love your family?" the judge asked, looking over his spectacles at the document. "Is that why you committed a felony forgery against your wife to fund a kickback scheme that is not love?" "Mr. Holloway, that is predation." The gavel came down, and it sounded like the best song I had ever heard. The judgment was absolute. Because of the systematic dissipation of marital assets, the judge awarded me the house, the entirety of my retirement accounts, and 70% of our remaining liquid savings. Gavin was ordered to pay restitution for the money he stole, plus legal fees. Regarding custody, the judge was even sterner. I was granted primary physical custody. Gavin got visitation on alternating weekends. But, and this was the kicker, all communication had to go through a court-monitored parenting app. He could not text me. He could not call me to manipulate me or gaslight me. If he wanted to speak, it had to be typed, recorded, and viewable by a judge. The fallout outside the courtroom was just as swift. The Tri-State Health Network concluded their internal investigation and fired Sloane immediately for gross ethical misconduct. She was facing a licensure review that would likely bar her from ever working in procurement again. My best friend was gone, stripped of the career she had sold her soul to boost. Gavin fared no better. His company terminated his contract the day the verdict went public. In sales, your reputation is your currency, and his was bankrupt. He lost the company car, the expense account, and the title of successful provider that he wore like armor. He was now just a broke, unemployed man living in a short-term rental apartment, drowning in legal debt. A week later, I was sitting on my porch, drinking coffee in the quiet morning air, when a plain envelope arrived. There was no return address. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Dear Mrs. Holloway, I am glad you found the strength to look. I am a senior fraud analyst at the bank where your husband held his business account. I flagged his transactions 6 times in 3 years. Each time, he provided just enough documentation to bypass the automated freeze. But I knew. I saw the pattern. I could not legally tell you due to privacy regulations, but I could not watch him drain your life anymore. I hope you are free." I lowered the letter. It was not a jilted lover. It was not a jealous relative. It was a stranger sitting in a cubicle, staring at numbers, who decided that doing the right thing was worth the risk. I walked inside and opened my laptop. I pulled up that very first email, the one that had terrified me, the one that had shattered my world. I looked at it one last time. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was a key. I hit delete. The screen went blank. I closed the laptop and looked out the window at the tree swing where Piper was playing. The silence in the house wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I had my daughter. I had my name back. And for the first time in a decade, the story of my life was being written by the only person who mattered me. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Brooke's revenge. Don't forget to subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people.